It is July 31st, 2024, and you have Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro in a full-on feud with billionaire Elon Musk, as you have just about everyone from neoliberals to neoconservatives in the US suddenly voicing their opinions about the recent election in Venezuela. Now, Maduro secured his third term, but you have the opposition claiming that the results weren't legitimate, claiming that the opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, was virtually unheard of before this election, that he actually got double the votes that Maduro got, and that the tallies just aren't showing it. So, what is the truth here, and how is social media playing a role in influencing the protests and the violent riots that we're seeing on the streets of Venezuela? And what is all of this leading to? Could we see increased involvement from the US, or has the US learned a lesson or two from what they went through just a few years ago when they tried to overthrow Maduro the last time? We discussed all that and more with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Sarah Bils, an independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, I know that there is a lot going on in the world right now, to say the least, but I wanted to focus in on what's happening in Venezuela because, as we saw last weekend, we had an election there. It didn't seem like it was too much of a surprise that you had President Nicolás Maduro claim a third term now.
Mhm.
However, the West is acting as though this is the end of the world. They're claiming that things weren't right when it comes to the way that the election was handled, and there are mass protests in the streets of Venezuela. So, how do you view this current situation? Is any of this coming as a surprise to you?
I'm kind of I'm a little surprised by the people that are carrying the message of the opposition, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But I think that it's being made out to be much bigger than it is, as in the protests against Maduro. But it wasn't expected for me because I thought that the West had been kind of quiet regarding the upcoming Venezuela election, like not really even talking about Maduro that much. And so when it kind of came up, like it hit us like a brick wall, and it was like exit polls and da 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 and this and this and that. And so I kind of was a little bit surprised that it took a turn that quickly.
Yeah, and it just feels like it's gone from 0 to 60, right? And we're looking at this going, okay, now we're hearing about these protests. And I thought it was interesting. Venezuela's defense minister is accusing the Western-backed opposition of attempting a media coup and condemned the widespread rioting that we saw in the wake of Maduro's election victory. So a media coup, because as we've seen, the US has tried an actual coup in Venezuela. What do you make of his wording there?
He's definitely referring to Elon Musk and his manipulation of the narrative on Twitter, which is really dangerous. I don't. Elon is an enigma to me. I can't really read him in the sense that I don't know if he knows what he's doing or he just is like, I need the resources, so that's what I want. I don't know if he understands the political implications, but he also has a gang of huge influencers that will then be like, will do their due diligence to carry the message as well. He meant a media coup in the sense that Elon really has been able to control the message. He was caught putting up. He got community noted on his own platform for posting a video that was really them stealing air conditioners and said they were stealing voting machines. But then there was a flurry of videos, and most videos from Latin America look like they were taken on like an iPhone 4 in like a rainstorm. So you can't really tell what's happening, who they are. And then a few of them we found were from 2017 when they tried to stage a different color revolution. So there's a whole mixture of misinformation, and Elon has, and I kind of want people to look at the pattern here because he really, and there's no way to deny that he had a huge hand in getting Milei elected for the lithium deposits and access to those in Argentina. He made him into like this cool guy, this cool like anti-establishment like rock star, and now this woman is like the nice like liberal, and she's done with communism and she's been oppressed, and so like they paint these narratives, but I don't feel like Elon was as prepared for this one, because this is as very lazy, and it's like almost like after the fact. And I also don't know if America really has the if they're stretched too thin to get into Venezuela and really, I mean, they have Argentina now. Do they really need to make a huge circus in Venezuela? I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by Elon's response and his kind of obsession with this. I mean, because he just kept tweeting and tweeting about Venezuela, and as he was referring to him, dictator Maduro, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there going, why do you care? I mean, unless you have a kid from Venezuela that we didn't know about, which could be
Which
possible.
is likely.
Right? At this point, or yeah, unless it's about the natural resources that you're trying to get access to, which I mean, it reminds me of his comments about Bolivia. We can
Well,
coup
yes,
wherever we
that's what I
want.
was gonna, I think that Bolivia still remains the ultimate goal because of the huge, I think they have the world's largest lithium deposits. Venezuela, for the oil and gold, obviously also has minor lithium deposits, but just weakening that kind of whole block that was forming. I mean, Argentina was going to join BRICS. That's probably why they went so hard to get Milei elected. And Venezuela would probably be next, or Bolivia, actually. They've expressed interest as well. So this is also about preventing people from forming a block, the economic block, and getting into BRICS.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think good to keep in mind because, yeah, you see Malay's rhetoric, like, what is he going to do about Maduro and Venezuela? That's the thing. I look at it and I'm like,
He wants
okay,
to
what are you
invade.
going to do? Right?
Okay.
It's just insane, and
And it's really incredible because you can look and see who kind of like surrounding is for Maduro and who is against, and it's the people that are against Maduro are all the states that have been couped recently, like Peru and Uruguay and Argentina wasn't couped, but they pushed that election. So it's all these just puppets around Venezuela that are asking for a recount, and then all of the normal states are just saying, yeah, we honor the election. It's their business.
that's a good point. Like exactly in the aftermath of it, when you had Russia and China congratulating Maduro, and then you had the US and the EU that were going, "Oh, we have serious concerns about this and it's like, why do you have anything to do with Venezuela's election? That's none of your business. It's not remotely near you." Like,
We had so many observers there and so many English
mhm.
speaking observers, and we had access to them the whole time, and they reported zero irregularities and that everything was calm. And even while, and this is the thing where it becomes really problematic, while they were posting the videos saying, oh, there's major unrest, all of the observers in Caracas were saying it's relatively calm, but those videos may have driven some of the violence because there was violence following that. I mean, there are people getting beaten to death, and they are making this kind of campaign to pull down all of the Chavez statues, which have now kind of become hugely viral posts on Twitter. So they could be feeding one another at this point. And that's where it becomes sort of really worrisome. How much influence does he really have? Who is seeing his posts? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people, so it's quite
Yeah.
scary.
Oh, it is. And it's interesting to me too when you look at the dynamic of the opposition as well, because instead of going with someone, and I guess you could argue that Marina Corina Machado is kind of the driving force here, but she wasn't the opposition candidate that ran. Instead, you had Edmundo Gonzalez, who was kind of a relatively unknown candidate. I mean, even in just the Western media articles that I was seeing about him, they were describing him as like a quiet, bird loving grandfather and a retiree. Right. And I'm sitting there going, that's the most you can find on this guy. Like he's running to be the next president of Venezuela. It didn't seem as though this was someone who was just taking the country by storm. So, what do you make of that approach? Does it not even matter who the West puppet is at this point?
There you go. Well, look at Zelensky. Same. Now it's
Mhm.
that dynamic has changed, but in the beginning, it's literally Biden and Kamala of Venezuela. Like the old man is very frail. She's kind of reading for him and holding his mic, and Marina Karina, which first of all, we need to make a cartoon character with that name, but she is a WEF kid raised by, I think she went to Yale, so that's who's really supposed to be vying for that seat, and he's there to be kind of the frail good cop that the benevolent leader that really has no political clout or political power at all. So I kind of make of it as she's another one of those sort of young and upcoming WEF kids, probably wasn't prepared to put her in the presidency, but that exactly what you said. They probably just plucked this guy out, just like Zelensky was plucked out of being an actor and was like, we're the kingmakers, and you are going to be president. And that's probably the same kind of situation. And no, I had never heard of this guy either. So I was trying to look him up today when you guys emailed me, and I was like, who is this man?
I know. I remember in the lead up to the election, because I was curious too. I'm like, I've followed Venezuela loosely over the years, right? And seen what the US attempted to do with Juan Guaido. Clearly that didn't work out, and he's living his best life in Miami right now. So he's doing just fine. But I was like going, okay, is there someone new that they, has risen through the ranks and is going to take on Maduro? And then the answer is no, there's really not. Instead, you have this guy who's virtually unknown, who now is claiming that he has evidence that he won the country's election. And you got him and Corina Machado telling reporters that they have obtained more than 70% of tally sheets from Sunday's election. And they show that Gonzalez had more than double Maduro's votes. That's really interesting to me, because you've got Maduro's side saying that he won by, around 51%, which seems possible. But then you have this other guy saying, no, I won by more than double. I mean, they're acting as if they're never going to present proof of this. And maybe that's the goal, right? Is to continually say Maduro's government will not present proof. Therefore, we'll never really know, but we're claiming that we have proof that he won by more than double. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but how do you see it?
This is the definition of insanity for the United States. They've been trying to coup Venezuela since Chavez took power, and they did coup him once, but then he took power within like 48 hours or something. Venezuela is not like the other South American states. They're the ones like Uruguay and Peru and Argentina. They're much more westernized. Venezuela has been under a Bolivar or Chavista sort of government for forever, and they're proud of that heritage. And I just, I posted a video yesterday on Twitter of John Bolton saying, we tried to coup them in 2009, blah, blah, blah. And now we'll try to do it again. And then I posted the video of Senator Chris Murphy, who went on a rant in 2020, and I think it was 2020, and said, we planned a coup in Venezuela. It blew up in our faces. What are we doing down there? Let's get out of there. And it's like, we're having the same conversations. So I think it's important to look back at those. So that's not even 4 years ago that he was saying those things. And here we are at their next presidential election. And I also think that the job is kind of half-assed in a way. It's very like lackadaisical in the United States' part. It doesn't feel very serious. With Juan, it even feels less serious than Juan Guaido, if you can believe that. That felt incredibly unserious. So I mean, I just don't think that they're even taking themselves serious. I think at this point, Elon Musk might be like having fun or seeing what he can do. But at that, yeah, I think that you're right. It'll be the whole who recognizes the government, who doesn't, another East-West divide, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think back on when the Trump administration was just like, all right, we've decided who is the new president of Venezuela. It's this guy. You've never heard of him before. He's in charge. And then, yeah, their attempted coup at the time was so ridiculous that everyone was like, what was that a coup? Like, did the US do that? We typically do a little better.
Yes, exactly. It was so lazy. It's like 6 Navy SEALs in a van with some Contras. I was like, that's a really lackluster coup. And I mean, the president lives in a presidential palace. So how's that going to work? So yeah, this one feels really lazy. I don't know if they think that maybe Venezuela's already lost anyway, and they just, but I'm really not sure, but because it doesn't feel very serious that they could I mean, immediately the military came out and said, we back Maduro. And if the militaries and the defense ministers say that, you're done. You can't coup a South America country without the military. So that's it.
Yeah, I know. It was funny. I was reading some reports on this, and they were like complaining about saying, oh, the military won't turn on Maduro. And I'm like, why would they? You're not putting up anyone serious. like the military is just going to go, oh, wait a second. There's this guy we've never heard of. Yeah, let's back him and overthrow the government. Like, it doesn't work like that. Even in any country, but let alone Venezuela.
Right.
But when it comes down to the US and their involvement. I know that with the Biden administration, they've been so focused on their proxy war against Russia that they were kind of like, nah, we're not going to deal with Venezuela. The Trump administration didn't do very well there. So we're just going to, move along and act as though that never happened. And then you have the possibility of a second Trump term. And I know that his cabinet may not include, Elliot Abrams, John Bolton, and those types, but that's not to say it couldn't include other types who want to go after Venezuela. Is there a concern about the US ramping up some sort of tensions targeting the country, whether that's just through more sanctions or something of the like? Or is it possible that given the timing of this mess right now, by the time we get to whoever's going to be in office in the US come January, they look at Venezuela and they go, okay, I don't think we want to mess with that again?
I think that's the most likely scenario. The latter is okay, I'm in office now. That can be put on the back burner. They look at Maduro as a very weak leader. I think that Americans have kind of psyoped themselves into thinking like Venezuela's holding on by a thread and like all of this. It's just not really, there's no evidence to really support that. Popular support is behind Maduro. We have two different sets of priorities between the administrations. Obviously, the Trump and that team are much more concerned with oil. That's why we saw the what we call a dumb and stupid, but they were actually what they thought was a good effort towards a coup under the Trump administration. And now we're seeing kind of a lazy, lackadaisical one under the Biden administration, because really it doesn't matter to the Biden administration that much, especially on their way out. Trump's priority is Israel. That's going to probably take center stage. It is not Ukraine. So we have Bibi kind of, and I don't want to get into Israel, but he's white knuckling until I'm thinking Trump has they both have a good shot because we're just such a mess. But if Trump gets back in office, he probably will save Bibi, but that's going to take so much work that Venezuela won't even. And by that time, I would think Venezuela would be in or almost in BRICS. And once you're in BRICS, you get under the umbrella of this. They have a sanctions immunity clause that you can't honor any Western sanctions if you are in BRICS. And so that's it. Then they just become economically feasible via Russia and China.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important thing to keep an eye on as well, because even just going back, I mean, it doesn't feel like 2019 was that long ago, and yet at the same time, it feels like it was forever ago. But if we go back to then and kind of the time that we were in when the US said, okay, we're going to put all of these sanctions on Venezuela. And while you did have this growing multipolar world, it feels like it has gone into like overdrive over the last 2.5 years, which makes sense with everything the West has thrown at Russia. But how do you think that multipolar world is likely to continue to play a role? Because it doesn't seem like the US is smart enough to really pick up on the fact that the more countries we sanction, the more they just all work together and work to evade our sanctions in the long run for some reason.
I don't know if they've fooled themselves or if they just don't care. But you said the last 2.5 years. What has been going on for 2.5 years? The special military operation, which has significantly weakened the West and de-armed them significantly and deindustrialized them to a certain point. If we are seeing a very loose grip on South America, that's a problem. That's the Monroe Doctrine. That's our backyard. That is very, very, very telling that we're being lazy and weak in South America, and that we're spread too thin elsewhere, that we can't even take care of our own backyard, which is usually our number one priority. CENTCOM and SouthCom are like really big into South America. So it's very telling. And that's why you're seeing multipolarity start to increase, because they see, oh, they're so weakened. We could probably start pushing for more of this, more of this, more of this. And that's why you'll see Niger kicking out the Americans. Other countries are starting to kick out their, like, just certain little bits and pieces of decolonization. And that's over the last 2 years due to the weakening of the West, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see that focus shift from kind of the US establishment as a whole, we'll say, right? Because it's both Democrats and Republicans at the end of the day. But it seems like that focus for Biden, it is, of course, Ukraine, right? That's personal to him. He's going to focus on Ukraine no matter what. But I also kind of wonder if we're looking at whether it be Trump, Kamala Harris, whoever else, if the Democrats decide to throw up someone else, whoever that may be who wins the election come November, what that focus looks like, because you've got a new president going in. And exactly as you were saying there, right? What's the point of going after Venezuela? Not really anything. There's not much that the US stands to gain from that. What's the point of going after Russia at this point? Well, we've seen how that didn't work. I guess they can try to go after China, but I mean, any logical person would say that's not going to go well for you. But what are your concerns looking forward, especially as, and I'll touch on it a little bit, but the fact that we do have so much popping off in the Middle East right now, and Netanyahu seems as if he's going to get a regional war one way or another, right? He's trying so hard to drag everyone into it.
I think with Trump, the thing that worries me is his inexperience, his lack of experience, and also his lack of empathy. I don't know if the care. I'm not sure how to say it. I don't think that Trump really cares if people die across the world, which is normal for a politician usually. So I'm wary that he will give Bibi too much of a leash. I think that people are very, very confused when they think that Trump is the best and he's going to be anti-interventionist. No, like Trump is much closer to Bibi than Biden is, and Bibi actually has expressed his dislike for Biden. So that's the thing that worries me the most. Trump doesn't want to fight with Russia anymore because he has some weird bromance that isn't reciprocated, by the way, for Vladimir Putin. I just wanted to protect Putin there, but right. So he doesn't want to argue. He keeps saying, I'll solve the war. I'll solve the war. He's had phone calls with Zelensky. It's clear that he wants to focus and hone in on the Middle East and Iran and Israel. And that's really worrying because Trump is so inexperienced, and he puts literally oil company board members in his State Department. So it's quite terrifying.
Yeah, it really is, especially the time that we're going into and looking all around going, okay, are we still on this plane of we're just trying to get to World War III through, well, I guess pick one of the three avenues. It feels like we are getting closer and closer, and certainly a lot at stake here all around. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Sarah Bils, independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.